This is a Porsche 911, specifically the 992 generation, and it's great. It has a flat six engine with 2 turbochargers. Now, as you drive about, that flat six will be the host to a series of explosions that will undeniably raise the operating temperature of the engine. Porsche has quite a clever response to that toasty issue, and it's a water-cooled system which works phenomenally well, and it's been that way for a little bit over 2 decades. But in the 911s of yesteryear, Porsche utilized quite a different medium.
That medium is air, and it's the primary source of cooling for this 993 generation of the Porsche 911, or as Porsche enthusiasts know it as, the last air-cooled generation of this iconic sports car.
Now that is a very important detail, maybe mostly to people like myself who spend their evenings dreaming about Porsches, but in any event, it's a great excuse for me to be able to chat to you about this car. So in today's video, I'd like to introduce you very briefly to what I think has always been a great Porsche collector's car. Now this being a 911, it's a sports car before anything, so let me talk you through a bit of the specs. This car came out as a 1995 model year when it came into the market in the United States, and it lasted until 98 before being replaced by the 996 generation. In terms of powertrain, it sported a modified version of the M64 3.6 liter flat six from the car that it replaced, the 964. Only here it produced 270 brake horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque. Originally, they only offered 2 trims, the Carrera and the Cabriolet, the base cars, really. The 993 Gen was the first 911 to offer a 6-speed manual instead of a 5-speed or a 4-speed. That meant 0 to 60 was done with in just 5.4 seconds. Or you could option out for the 4-speed Tiptronic, or the automatic transmission of the time, which did 0 to 60 in 6.4 seconds. So you have to understand, it's not like today where PDK is the fastest thing in the world, and if you want to go fast, you go for the PDK. Back in the era when this car was released, for a lot of the cases, the manual transmission was the faster option. Other things that are worth noting. Today, we look at the 911 as being the perfect sports car. Great power, great reliability, great handling, everything you could possibly want. But I think that the reputation of the 911 might have been a bit different back in the 90s, and that's to say that it was a bit of a handful, and when it would start to go, it would really go. It was quite an intimidating car to drive. I think that with this, the 993 generation, and the technical innovations that Porsche incorporated into this car, they started to change that reputation and in turn, completely change the narrative.
The rear suspension incorporated a new multi-link twin arm setup which improved driving stability. Rear wheel movement was better managed, as was the tire contact patch. When cornered, the toe would shift inward to help mitigate rotation. This meant that the 911 was a more stable sports car, one that could leave its driver with more confidence, a reputation that carried over generation by generation. The 993 was also lighter. The engine was 14 pounds lighter, the wheels 13 pounds. The chassis was aluminium, and even though the gearbox was a 6-speed in place of the previous 5-speed, it didn't bring with it any additional weight. Then there was the issue of pricing.
With every new generation of a car, you expect that the pricing will marginally increase. Maybe not by huge amounts, but always in the direction of further emptying your pockets. But with the 993 generation, that wasn't actually the case, because the MSRP for this car, when it came out in 1995, was $59,990. That made it around $5,000 less than the 964, the generation that it replaced. And that was really a shock to me, because of all of the brands in the world, the last brand that I would expect to get cheaper with the new generation would be Porsche. But that's exactly what happened with this car. All of the technical innovations, all of the changes in the driving dynamic, all done for less money out of your pocket. It's really quite staggering, and it's such a big piece of Porsche's history, especially when you consider that it may very well have been the last 911 we ever got.
In the 90s, Porsche was in financial trouble. They were making the 928, the 944 to be replaced by the 968, and of course, the 911, none of which shared any components. That meant that production costs were high and every car needed its own set of manufacturing.
To make matters worse, sales were down, and the result was that in the early 90s, Porsche was on the verge of bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy!
The solution came in the form of two cars, the 986 generation Boxster and the 996 generation Porsche 911. And these were two very important cars for a couple of different reasons. First off, the 996 was the first water-cooled Porsche 911 and was also the first 911 to share body panels with another member of the Porsche family, the new Boxster. What that meant was that production cost could be lower, and also there was a whole new market of customers for Porsche that could go after the Boxster. They could get a slightly less expensive two-door roadster that still had those stunning Porsche looks. It was a very important page in Porsche's history, and ultimately I think it saved the brand and made it the brand that it is today. But the rest really is history. Porsche is what it is today, an icon of what a sports car can be, what a sports car really should be. But what if that strategy hadn't worked? What if the 986 and 996 never happened? This 993 may well have been the last 911 that we ever saw. It could have just faded into the history books of the automotive industry as one of the great sports cars that simply didn't make it. And that reality gives me a newfound appreciation for this generation of the car. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to Porsche of Ontario for loaning me this car to do a video for you guys. Now, this specific car is actually a 1997, so it has slightly more power than I mentioned earlier, 280 horsepower and 251 pound-feet of torque. But it's no ordinary 993. This one was restored as part of the Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge by the team here at Ontario. So they went through everything on this car. It's as close to a brand new example as you can find, and it's currently for sale. So if you're in the market for a 993, this one definitely deserves a looking into. So I'll leave the links down in the description below, the regular links as well as the post to this specific car. Otherwise, comment down below with your thoughts on the video and the 993 911, as well as like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to show your support for the channel, which is very much appreciated, and so that you don't miss a post. But until the next video, thanks again for watching, and take care.